there you are. Yes, it is I, the conspicuous Moo, and once again, I bring you more Brewmaster news. Now, this is going to be a bit of a double bill going on because we've had some PTR changes today, which will be folded into the beta changes for tomorrow, Australian time anyway. So we're going to go over the major change, which was to Keg Smash. Then we've also got a bit of a in memoriam for Evasive Stride. We've got another beta character wipe coming in. There's a PTR stress test as well. So there's a lot going on. So I guess let's get cracking. Oh, alas, Evasive Stride, you were so good for so long, and now you really aren't. Way back when Evasive Stride was first added to the beta, it was just a flat 5% increased stagger effectiveness, and it was such an obvious choice as your first endurance conduit to take that Blizzard obviously thought, well, that's, instead of bringing other endurance conduits up, they brought everyone else back down, and they changed it to a 2% chance to heal for the damage of a stagger tick, instead of actually, you know, causing the damage, and that made it a double dip. Because you would not only you wouldn't incur the stagger tick damage, but it would also heal you for the value of that stagger tick damage. So, you know, it potentially looked pretty good. But initially it was bugged. It wasn't a 2% proc chance in Red Stagger, it was a 98% proc chance. And it would account for 30% of the overall healing when... for brewmasters. It was absolutely insane. Basically, when you hit Red Stagger in beta when this thing wasn't working properly, you were immortal, and it was most entertaining. But they did fix it, and its healing is now much lower, down to 0.3%. Now, when it did get changed, I did assume that, you know, it was still a relatively good conduit, and no one had really given me much information to the contrary, but a very kind commenter on one of the videos recently did say that it really isn't as good, like it's really bad. So I checked some logs, and yeah, Evasive Stride is pretty bad right now. You would have to be in Red Stagger for a long time for this to have any real meaningful effect. And you know, most of the passes for the Mythic 10 plus to Mythic 15s, they've got about 8 to 10% in Red Stagger for those runs, and so you're looking at a 2% chance from an 8% overall stagger dot. Not great. So yeah, at the moment, unfortunately, it is borderline useless unless you win Red Stagger for a very large proportion of the time. And of course the problem with it is that the way that Purifying Brew is designed at the moment, you need to purify as often as possible in order to get your purified cheese stacks that you can use on Celestial Brew, which means that you really shouldn't be in Red Stagger all that much. And so it's not very good. And that's a pity, because, you know, it started so well. So what can be done about Evasive Stride to fix it? Well, you could increase the proc chance substantially to make it maybe 8 to 10% of overall healing. That's probably too high and will probably get nerfed, but that's where I would like to see it to make it a worthwhile conduit to take. You could have the proc actually work in all levels of stagger, not just Red Stagger, but you know, the heavier the stagger you get into, the higher the heal you get from it. So, you know, at 2% initially as a level 1 conduit, you get up to 4.8% I think after the most recent Evasive Stride change, and you get a greater healing component, you know, the heavier you go into stagger. Or you could just be boring, but effective, and you could just return it back to what it was, the increased 5% stagger effectiveness, which I think increased to 20%. You probably wouldn't get it that high now, but at least we know where we're going with that one, and you know, it would increase one of our major ways of mitigating damage. But at the moment, RIP Evasive Stride. So if Evasive Stride is useless, then what is left? Well, not an awful lot, which I have pointed out to the Twitterverse. Harm Denial is pretty much the only thing left really out of all of the endurance conduits that's any potential good. I mean, Expel Harm is ideally used as a mini cooldown. Usually save up 4 or 5 spheres, and then you're getting low on health. You use it, and a base buff of 20% to that healing, you know, is pretty good. I think it goes up to 48% at a level 15 conduit, so it can only get better from there. The buff to the healing itself has to be pointed out. It's only when you use Expel Harm. It doesn't apply to the Ox Orbs that are just floating around and that you run over. There was some speculation at one point that they were going to do that, but it appears it's just only tied to the Expel Harm component. So that's a shame. But you know, you get a little additional damage. Not much, but you would if you took Harm Denial. So I guess at the moment, that's the Endurance Conduit frontrunner. Which is a bit sad, really. This was an oddity. As I took my stats on live, and you know, there are all the stats, and then I took a direct copy of the character and then I put it on the PTR just to see what the differences would be. And you know what? Post squish, it's pretty much the same. The stagger is substantially lower on the PTR, but that really wasn't much of a concern because, you know, we know that they've made stagger changes. Essentially, the amount of agility required to increase your stagger has been lowered slightly in the PTR, so that might account for that. The dodge was the interesting one. You can see I'm at 20% on live and 12% on the PTR, and there's no dodge rating on either of those characters. I don't know what's going on there. I'm asking about that, but I will get back to you. You might also notice critical strike at 26% on live and 25% on PTR. That might just start to be the beginning of the secondary stat scaling that they brought in, because once you go above 25%, you start getting diminishing returns, so you can't stack it endlessly. There is a cap, and you will be cut off eventually. So that difference, that might just be what that is. But yeah, by and large, the squish-wise, they've done rather well, I think. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting. So, this morning, Keg Smash had a change on the PTR, which will be folded into the beta in a few hours' time. And at first look, you sort of go, oh, they hate brewmasters and everything's going to burn down in flames. But once you take a closer look at it, this is actually pretty good. So, they've added something to the tooltip that says that it deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. So you think, oh god, it's hard-capped. It isn't hard-capped. You know, it is still uncapped in terms of targets. It's just the way the damage scales now, past 5 targets, has changed. The first thing about this change, of course, is that when you cast Keg Smash and it does 750 damage, it will do 750 damage now to the first 5 targets you hit. Beforehand, it had the squirt scaling, which I mentioned in my recent video regarding the AoE target caps that are being introduced, and that meant that, you know, you'd hit the first one for 750, and then it would slowly go down for the second, third, fourth, fifth, and ad infinitum until eventually, you know, you're hitting 20 targets, but the 20th target is being hit for practically nothing. So that part has been changed, so that automatically is a buff because now you're hitting 5 first targets for maximum damage. Good! Now it does look like, unless, you know, they're making a completely unique damage profile for Keg Smash, apart from every other ability in the game, that they're going along the lines of the Thunderclap and Revenge for Protection Warriors, which is a rather convoluted equation. You can just see it down there on the right hand side, but essentially it means that the linear scaling is higher than the squirt scaling we had before, so that does mean that any additional targets that we do hit are going to be damaged for more than they were before. So yes, this is a buff, and I have been doing a lot of PTR testing and logging today, and on the older logs before this change, Keg Smash was doing about 700 DPS, and today it's doing about 760. So yeah, with that increase to the scaling, damage scaling as well, this is a buff to damage, this is a buff to threat. This is a very good thing indeed. Now, the reduction of the cooldowns on brews from 4 to 3 seconds is not so good. It kind of brings High Tolerance and Blackout combo closer together in terms of how much, you know, how much uptime you can have on Celestial Brew, and I'll go into that in just a second. Let's do science. So I've been spending a large amount of hours just toddling around on target dummies and Borealis on the PTR, trying to work out whether or not Blackout combo is better than High Tolerance, because at the moment High Tolerance on the bottom row of the talents is the default pick. But you know, I'm always a fan of Blackout combo. You make things a little more complicated, but you might get a better payoff from it. So I had a look at the damage, the amount of casting you were doing, and the amount of healing and purified chi stacks you could get, and whether or not, you know, you would get substantially more Celestial Brews out of going Blackout combo. No, is the short answer. The longer answer is that, in terms of damage, of course, obviously Blackout combo does edge a little bit ahead because of the 100% damage bonus for Tiger Palm when you use it in the Blackout combo. Because Tiger Palm's damage isn't really that high, 100% of damage isn't that high either. I mean, you're probably getting an extra 100, 120 damage out of each Tiger Palm that you cast, so that's not particularly impressive, and all the other damage looked pretty consistent with either High Tolerance or Blackout combo. Healing wise, the actual casting of Purifying Brew, and therefore the Purified Chi stacks, is actually very close indeed. There's not a lot in it at all, so you won't be getting any bigger stacks out of using Blackout combo. But the main reason that you would be using it is to get the additional 2 seconds off in brew cooldown reduction by using Keg Smash with Blackout combo. And how much of a difference does that make? Well, because it's been narrowed a little from 4 to 3 seconds, not all that much. I mean, I was looking at the uptime percentages for High Tolerance versus Blackout combo, and you know, you will get slightly higher uptime with Celestial Brew, but it's about 3%. Which isn't a lot. You know, you're talking a difference between 28 seconds with Blackout combo and around 31 seconds for High Tolerance. It's not a lot in it, and certainly not enough to make it worth taking Blackout combo. So, at the moment, in summary, is it worth taking? Rotationally, no, it is not. It would need to have more substantial brew reduction, and it would need to have more substantial damage. At the moment, unfortunately, the passive High Tolerance is still the better choice overall. Okay, this is fun, and only something I found the other day. When the Legendaries first came out, I just went to the Brewmaster ones and went, oh, that one's good. This is like 1, that's good at the moment. But what I didn't realise, of course, that there are some general legendaries available to all classes, and people keep talking about VitSac, and what's VitSac? Don't know what they're talking about. It turns out that there's a general legendary called Vitality Sacrifice, and the way that it works is the first time you damage an enemy, you basically get an absorb shield that reflects back the a certain amount of attacks that elite will do to you, and it should occur only once every minute. So, that was supposed to have been fixed because it was absolutely absurdly strong. And in some of the logs I was looking at, and you know, you're sort of like top 3, top 2 for healing and damage. This was a very, very strong legendary. So they were supposed to have nerfed it, but it doesn't look like it's been nerfed at all because I had a look at some logs from yesterday, and it's still top 4. It's still very, very good. So I sent him a tweet saying, is this working properly? And if it isn't working properly, could you not nerf it? Because it would be really nice to have a second useful legendary for brewmasters. You know, as usual, I don't get a response, but you know, in their defense, you know, they do say that they read all of the Twitter feedback. So we'll take their word for it, and you know, that's my feedback, and I'm giving it to them, and that's that. I have heard another thing that says that the way that Vitality Sacrifice works is that cooldown only works per elite target, which would account for why it's proccing an awful lot more than the 1 minute cooldown it's meant to have, because you're switching targets, hitting them first and then getting the reflect shield. If that is indeed the case, then this is a legendary that is working properly. And not only that, it's brilliant. So keep an eye out for Vitality Sacrifice, because I think this is going to be one of those sleeper ones that we're going to have a bit of fun with before they find it and nerf it to pieces. Finally, we do have a Shadowlands beta character wipe this week. They are going to reset this tomorrow morning. Basically, their problem is at the moment that there are a lot of characters that have been created on the beta who have got into all of these systems that are not working properly, and now, of course, those characters are full of broken mechanics, essentially. So they're going to wipe everything out, and there will be a couple of servers, so you can start from 50 and restart at Renown level 1 and pick your Covenant all over again, and there will be a level 60 as well, the Torghast Realm, which will allow you to do all of the end level testing and do some more Mythic Plus logs, because I'm getting obsessed with logs, and I like logs, and log reading is my new thing. So keep doing those, and make them public. Thank you. So yes, another beta build. getting on for time. Still no pre-patch date. What's going on? So at this point, the next likely date for the pre-patch is October the 6th, and today's PTR actually came up as a release flag, so that usually means that they're pretty much close to pre-patching us. They are doing a stress test, I believe, sometime today as well. They want everyone to get onto the PTR and really give it a hard time. So these are all good indications that we're going to get a pre-patch soon. The next likely date, of course, is October the 6th, which is next Tuesday. Now, in terms of their actual pre-patch content, you know, you're only looking at about 2 weeks worth, or that's all I saw anyway. There's a lot of zombies, and there's a couple of quest chains which are pretty unremarkable, and at the end of the day, you know, if we never ever got them, that wouldn't be such a bad thing. That said, there are still an awful lot of broken things, particularly on the beta, but also on PTR. You know, abilities that don't work, interfaces that don't work. There's obvious balance issues at the moment, as we are very well aware, and some of the leveling features, the new leveling features as well, are not working properly or haven't even been implemented yet. And time is ticking, you know, we're inside 4 weeks now, and this is getting a little bit nervioso, because we're getting rather close to the launch date, which has been arbitrarily decided by Activision Blizzard, probably for commercial reasons, to be October the 27th. Things are getting very tight indeed. Now, World of Warcraft probably can't afford to have a second beta launch like they did with Battle for Azeroth, because, you know, Battle for Azeroth was pretty much patched all the way through to cover a lot of the problems that it had, and still has to this day. I don't think WoW can really afford to do that again, which is why I would, like a lot of people, actually prefer them to launch it when it's done, like the old Blizzard polish way, where they would only actually release it once it's in a state to be released. But, you know, we've seen Warcraft 3 Reforged, so we know that's not quite what they're going with these days. The danger is, of course, that, you know, we always appreciate that sub numbers are going to drop after the first month. People are going to try Shadowlands, and they're not going to like it. They're not going to like the Covenants. You know, they don't want to turn into a moose, and I don't know why, because turning into a moose is awesome. This is why you should be Night Fae. And, you know, they'll go away. That's fine. But with BFA, of course, things were so wrong, so dull, so broken, and so beta that the sub numbers pretty much collapsed, and they had a lot of difficulty recovering. People would come back for another month for each patch and then just get bored and leave again. And that's not really something that I think World of Warcraft can afford to do. So they're in an interesting pickle there. I wish them the very best of luck. I feel very sorry for these developers, but please God, do not release this broken and unfinished and beta testing. That would be disastrous. Anyway, Mrs. Moo's getting tired, so I better toddle off now. I mean, we've got some major changes probably coming tomorrow as well, so that will be part 2 of the double bill. But until then, I am the conspicuous Moo, and yes, I do feel like a brew.